Hi, this is Roger. Thanks for dropping by. I've got to water all the mounts today and that sort of thing. So again, I'll see what I can find as I go round. Bit lethargic today. You'll find out later. There's a great big long repotting video, which if you're watching this, you'll have already seen that one. We're into the yesterday today thing again. But basically, you know, if you watch that big repotting video all the way through, there was a problem towards the end, and it's a problem. It just pops up now and again. It's under control, but it just makes you feel a bit lethargic, a bit not down, but just, you know, not all bouncy and bubbly sort of thing. But I walked in here to sort of start and top the foggers up, and as soon as I got to here, I thought, oh, that green hornet smelling yellow. In the background we have chocolate. Yay! The Shari baby's got its fragrance. It's faint, but it's got it. So all it needed was that extra day or two to just get a hold of itself. Plus it got watered. You know, sometimes it's just that, you know, a bit of a lack of hydration. It can't push the fragrance out. That's a theory, not a fact. But makes sense to me. Obviously, to produce the fragrance as well as the blooms, the plant's got to be pushing quite hard. It takes a lot of energy to produce a spike on an orchid. You know, uses up a lot of its resources, which need replacing. That's our bit. Anyway, so we have a combined fragrance. We have this one, which is strong, and we have this one pushing into the background. It's a strange mix at the moment with those two together. I might move this one. If I put that one over there somewhere, I can separate the scents, you know, because at the moment they're just merging. Mind you, as soon as the fans go on, they're going to merge anyway, so a bit of a daft idea. Somebody asked how my giant anosmum was doing. Well, I'd already gone past it and thought, I can't be bothered to film. But as I've started, technically, it's coming on nicely. It's pushing out a nice root system, yeah, but it's still only got one cane. It still hasn't started a second cane yet. I would have preferred to see at least another one cane, because that's an awful lot of old canes and only one new one, which I may do something about. I may actually take the back end of the plant off and see if I can get the dormant eyes on that section to shoot out. And then if they do, the two plants can go back together on the same mount and become a good show. The nester's pushing on nicely. The three canes are moving along, but due to the lack of oomph that they've been getting at the start of the growing season, I don't think those canes are going to be as long as last year's single cane. But this year I've got three. So as far as numbers of blooms are concerned, if those canes are come up a bit short by the end of the growing season, at least there's three of them. I might start a new set of orchids. I mean, it doesn't apply to many of mine, but it applies to both of these. These are Rhynchostylis giganteas. And the new set is, why won't you bloom? And these two are both in that category. They're growing okay. I mean, you know, this one's got a new leaf. That was its last new leaf, and previous new leaf. It's growing okay. This one, I noticed this morning, it's just starting a new leaf. Neither of them have pushed out a new root lately. They tend to push out big, large, fat roots from a bit farther up the rhizome somewhere. And they don't branch very easily. They're dependent on these giant, chunky roots. And they do like to drink a bit. They do like to dry in between, but they like to drink. So, you know, I think I'm looking after them okay. They're getting enough light. You know, everything's going for them except for the fact no spikes. So come on, you two, get your act together. I'd love to see a spike on one of these two because I've never had one. They're both non-bloomers. We'll see how we go. And while I've got this out, there were swear words on this one because it fell flat on its face, and that stumpy thing sticking out there was a nice new growth, and it broke off. And that new growth there also slightly bent. The other new growth back here was a unharmed on the ground. It literally fell like that, flat on its face. But inside that broken new growth, it looks like it's growing again. There's something going on, because that was a clean break, an absolute right-angled break, clean, and now it's got a pointy bit sticking out, so we shall see. Now that one got bent. Whether there's enough structural integrity to that new growth to allow the nutrients and the hydration to get through and push it on, I don't know. Time will tell. But yeah, I'm surprised you didn't hear the language when I dropped that in the States. It was loud and totally unsuitable for videos. Or next door, or even in the States perhaps. Anyway, I mean, it'll recover. And it's got a good new growth at the back end, and that one may actually survive even though it got a bit bent. And we'll see. Bloom's still hanging on. I mean, I didn't realise Brassivola nodosa blooms lasted that long. But that was a strange one, because the spike had 4 blooms on, and then just as they were starting to fade, it produced a new bud. So the spike extended, and I've never heard of that on that type of plant before. But anyway, it's extended its blooming period, so it's still hanging in there. The scent from that single bloom in the evening is still stunning. Just one bloom, and fills this grow room. This is another why won't you bloom. It's sat right next to the nodosa. Now this is a hybrid. This is Brassivola David Sanders. I think it's got Digbyana in it. But whatever. I mean, it pushed out that growth to the right hand side, that lovely long leaf down there, and it didn't bloom last year. And then this one at the front, that lead pushed out quite nicely and produced a sheath, and it still didn't bloom. Oh dear. I just do sometimes wonder. As I said, it's in exactly the same light and care conditions that the nodosa is in, and the nodosa pushed up 2 spikes with 4 blooms on each. So, I mean, this one has got another new growth starting, so we'll see what happens with that one. But yeah, this is another non-bloomer. Pushes out roots all around the back, but no blooms. Not yet, anyway. Always have to rephrase it, not yet, We'll see how we go. This one's just decided to grow. There's a little mini phalaenopsis. It's just been sat there with no new roots, no new leaves, and I was in the process of actually thinking, well, I'm going to chuck you out because you're a waste of space. Although it is a tiny little bit of space, but it's just pushed out a couple of new roots, and now I've just noticed it's starting a new leaf. So it's going to recover. It's a long way off blooming, but it is a genuine mini phalaenopsis. Those are the size of the leaves. So, oh well, it's another one perking up, slowly but surely. I'm showing this dendrobium. This is Loddigesiae. This was got earlier this year. It had some leaves on the canes, but what it did have is some reasonable roots and some signs of some new growth. Look at the difference that you can have with a plant that arrives in good condition. As I said, this had an existing root system and some signs of new growth. Now you can see the new growths. There's those 3 big ones at the top, there's this lot coming out near the bottom, and those heading off the side. It had a good start to the year, and it's still got 3 or 4 months worth of growing to do this year, so it's going to be a nice plant. I mean, I don't know how big it needs to get before it will bloom. It's a new one, but that's progress based on the fact it started well. It wasn't into recovery on arrival. It was already in quite good condition. That was one of speciotic plants. Nice plant, and it's coming on well. I wish all my plants would be in that category, but those are the sad times we live in. People produce plants to sell with blooms on. The faster they can do it, the better they make their money and get on with the next lot. That's how we are now. Unless you've got a good grower's nursery nearby, then there's not much you can do about it. Apart from private sellers perhaps, but they don't come up often, and they're relatively restricted in what they can supply. But yeah, that's coming on nicely. Well pleased with that one. Now, the only two reasons these two objects still exist and are not fertilising the hedge is because I promised a piece of this to somebody, so I'm trying to save it, you know. And quite honestly, it's not in the way. It just lives down there, and it often gets picked up in a video and people say, what's that plant lying on its side down there? And often I've forgotten it's there. But this is the one that was just in a hell of a state, basically, and these were the only two pieces that I thought might be viable, so I hung on to them. And they get something very similar to water culture, basically, because when I've finished watering, you know, and I've got some left and I remember, I just pour that into that and actually stand those in it for 24 hours or when I remember. It's not normally more than 24 hours simply because I want to reuse all this, you know, and most of the time that's daily. But that's what happens, and then they soak for a while, get absolutely wringing wet, hopefully get some hydration in the plant, and then they just get stuck down there to dry out again. But I picked them up this morning, and after all this time, we got signs of life on the end of this one. There's some little root nubbins showing and a root showing. That's not a strong, healthy root, but it's a root. So there is still life in that plant, and maybe it's going to give it a go. That's the back end of the plant. So obviously the two leaved bulbs are older bulbs, and the leaves on the leads were lost. So they're leafless. But if you look at the base of that one, it has got an eye, and another one that side, and it's now decided to try and push some roots out. So maybe that's going to make it. Maybe. Wait and see. I mean, these were in a hell of a state. And on this one, I doubt if the camera's going to spot it, but let's see if I can put me... hang on. Play with my fingers here so that I can point. Just there on the end of my thumb is some green. Now that's going to be a root tip down in there, but you know, these roots are still firm. They're not growing and they're not branching, but they're still firm. They're not rotten, and if they're not rotten, in theory they can get some hydration into the plant, albeit excuse me, at a very low level. But again, that's the back end of the plant. The eye on that pseudo bulb has gone. The eye on the next one is also gone, but if you look at what is the lead, there's a viable eye there. It's not growing, and there's another little one on the other side of it. So if it can start pushing some roots, it may recover. So these are now going into a more don't forget Roger element, because sometimes they sit down there for a week or more without getting stood in the glass, because I don't take any notice of them because I just thought they were dead. But yeah, basically they'll get a better wet dry cycle now, so I'll probably soak them for a day and then only leave them dry for 2 or 3 days and then get them back into some water, and maybe they'll pick up. Maybe. It's been months and months and months I've been doing this with these plants, and not a light, and now looks like they might try. As this is a relatively short video, and I've finished for the day now, so this will be the last thing I'm filming, I'll actually put the pop-up up of the blooms on this, and then you'll see why I'm trying to save it, and why somebody said I'll have a bit of that. Well, having a piece of this is a long way off, because I've got to get, you know, quite a few new growths to full maturity and recover this plant. So it's at least a year away, if not 2, and that's if it actually makes it, which I've still got no absolute guarantee, but at least it's going to give it a go. So that's it for today. I've watered all my mounts now at a leisurely pace, and I've got to go and finish mucking about with the video that by the time you watch this one will have already been done and loaded. I love playing about with time. It just happens sometimes that you know, I'm sure others get in the same boat. You've got several videos on the go and neither of them are actually finished. But in your mind, you know which order they're going to get posted in. So you can talk about one that isn't actually finished and posted because you know it will be. And that's the sort of situation I'm in. There's one coming soon, big repotting jobby, and then this one to follow on sometime later in the day when I finish messing about with it. Okay, and hope you've enjoyed a little tour round, some progress on some things, and yeah, just a daily watering video really, that's all. And I'll see you next time. Thanks for dropping by.